Hey, hey, Mystic Magic Podcast fans. We are up for an exciting show today because today my guest is Reverend Sylvia E. Sumter. Reverend Sylvia is currently the senior minister of the Unity of Washington, D.C. That's right, D.C. And she has served in this position since 1991. Prior to her tenure in Washington, D.C., she served as the chairperson of Communication Studies and Skills Department for the Unity School of Religious Studies in Unity Village, Missouri. She was licensed as a minister in 1986 and ordained as a Unity minister in 1987 as a graduate of the Unity School of Christianity. Reverend Sumter's academic accomplishments include a Master's of Education, a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, and an Associate of Arts in Business Administration. She's a natural and gifted spiritual teacher whose work has had an extraordinary effect on so many there in Washington, D.C., and in fact, every place that she travels to around the world. She is a wonderful transformational speaker, and she uplifts humanity through helping people to raise their consciousness and take their rightful place in their journey as light bearers and divine expressions. So through her work as a minister and a professional counselor, she continues to teach and help others to expand their spiritual consciousness and vision by living in the awareness of the divine through prayer, meditation, and spiritual practices and principles to live life fearlessly and with authenticity. So welcome, Reverend Sylvia.
Wonderful.
Welcome to Mystic Magic.
Yes, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here and to tag in with you and your wonderful listeners to the podcast. So thank you for having me.
Well, yeah, I've heard what a dynamic and energetic speaker that you are, and yet that you have this unassuming manner. And so what prompted you to want to go into ministry?
Well, I don't know if it was a prompting so much as a calling, a tapping on the shoulder, because I actually ran away from the call for about 8 years. And then I got so tired of running, I just had to give in and say, okay, Spirit, let's see where this goes, to see if this is really something that I'm called to do. And it's been, 6 years later, here I am still at the job. So
now you're there in the nation's capital, and I know there's a division between church and state, but how do you navigate when you're right there in the bed of all of our challenges as a nation and as a world? And how do you manage that in terms of keeping your spiritual guidance and inspiration and also kind of braiding in some of what's happening outside the walls of the church?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I accepted the ministry here, I knew that this was going to be a special assignment and a special place. And so what I have done is I see it as Unity of Washington, D.C., being that sort of beacon of light and hope, in a place that can be filled with, as we all know, confusion, challenging conflicts, darkness, great joys, high vision, the mix. But we see ourselves, and I try to help my congregants to see themselves as playing a very important part of holding a high vibration, that no matter what is taking place, we are a center of light, and we are a place that is radiating. We talk about every Sunday, our affirmation is radiating goodness, radiating our truth, our light beyond these walls. And we all know how energy works. So we see our center as being an energy force that blesses everybody, whoever is in the seat of power and who's not in the seat of power. So it's really a spiritual assignment. And my congregation really has bought into this whole idea of being a light bearer. So we're true students, we focus on the truth, but we also now see ourselves as serving a high purpose for keeping the high watch in the nation's capital. So actually, it's great. And I've had people I've had the fortune of having people who serve in our elected offices sort of come through. The great Eleanor Holmes Norton has, when my church was on Capitol Hill, we've moved, but she would come through. Elijah Cummings would come through. So we've had people sort of dip in for a little bit of spiritual energy and blessing. So it's been great.
Those are some powerful, powerful people. I knew something had to be going on because when I saw them write Black Lives Matter so that the 45th president could look out his window, I said, see, something's going on over there in Chocolate City. What y'all doing over there?
That was a bad move by my sister. That was a really bodacious move, and I happen to know the mayor. I know her heart, and she's a fabulous individual and a really good public servant. But that move right there, that was excellent because it went beyond the thought of just making sure that she stays within the boundaries of being the mayor and holding, but she was making a statement, and it was just the right thing at the right time. And it stands there today. People come by and they just go to that site so they can take their picture, and have it for the world to see. So it was great. Yeah.
Now, how do you get these Black people who are used to traditional religion coming into a unity center? Because we know that's some serious Black folks in DC. What you do? What's your magic?
Well, I have to say this, that one thing about living in Washington, D.C. is the people that come are coming for some serious purpose. And there are people who have to think outside the box to do what they do. And so because they're willing to expand the way they view the world and what they think is necessary, it's easier, I believe, for them to also expand their consciousness into a new way of experiencing their spiritual life. Now, don't get me wrong, the Black church is still strong and well here in D.C., in the nation's capital. But I also find that I have people here who are willing to open their consciousness up. DC is filled with lawyers and, high-powered people, very well-educated people. But I think that we have something that offers a way in which they can, in fact, expand who they are. And so we haven't had any problem. We've got great music, I have a wonderful band who can play some jazz. We have all types of music, so that helps as well. And we just have, I think, who knows, maybe it's the message of truth delivered in a fresh way. I've been here now, I've been at the church 30 years. And so coming here earlier, where women were still just making their way into the Black church, in terms of leadership. So I had my fair share early on of having to deal with my brothers who, if I was invited to a spiritual service because maybe one of my congregants or someone passed away and I was asked to do a prayer or something at a traditional service. And you know how they have a pulpit that's down on the floor for those who are not, but I would take me and my Bible and I'd walk right on up to the high pulpit amidst not being disrespectful now.
Right.
But also, just feeling comfortable in taking my rightful place, as a woman who's also called by God.
Yeah.
But now I don't have to do that because I think that's, that was 30 years ago, and things have changed, thank God, a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, because probably in this millennia, when I came back to Chicago, the hearse driver's like, how about that, a female minister? I'm thinking, what rock have you been under, right?
Yeah.
But listen, you are like this wonderful powerhouse. You were around when there was just beginning to be a little color, right, in the unity family of ministers. And so we don't hear about your story so much. We hear about Johnny's, we hear about Ruth, we hear about, different people, but what was that like for you?
Well, it was interesting with Johnny and some of her other colleagues that followed her. They were not allowed to stay on the grounds. But when I came, at least some of it has changed quite a bit. But when I came, there were no, you did not see people of color in the city of Lee Summit walking around. I remember there was one of my other colleagues who was in the class behind me. We were in the grocery store and we saw a black woman and we were like, oh my God. And we followed the woman around like, oh my God. So yeah, but the requirement had reversed to keep people safe. First of all, in the classes, they would only accept about 2 or 3 people of color in each class. We never had more than that. Except for the second year, the urban school classmates were able to join us. But when we were introduced to the first year, so it was myself and two other people. So they had either 2 or 3 per class, no more than that. And we had to stay on the grounds because they wanted to make sure that we were safe and secure and protected, which I didn't mind. It was fine living on the grounds, but I had not been in the Midwest. I'm a New York City girl. I'm an urban girl. So living in the Midwest where I was an oddity, if you went out to eat breakfast or lunch, you got the stairs and all of that. It was a challenge, but I think they were ready for the experience. Now they're really ready now because we're coming out in full force. But it was a bit of a challenge. But I felt protected because we were on the grounds. We had to stay on the grounds at that
interesting point. Juxtaposition, like you say.
Yeah.
And and now they're building Airbnbs in Johnny's name and Ruth Mosley's name, and so much is shifting.
Yes.
But before you went into ministry, you were studying communications. What did you see for your life at that point? Were you thinking of being a speaker, or what were you planning?
No, actually, I was in higher education, not necessarily speaking. I worked with young college students, and in a program called it was called the HEOP program, Higher Education Opportunity Program, and it was designed to give people of color, not necessarily just African Americans. We work with Native Americans as well, people who were traditionally left out of the college experience, and we promoted them and recruited them to come in. I worked at Syracuse University to bring them onto a school like that and get them acclimated, give them all the skills that they needed. But this really was a calling. It really was a calling. I have an article that somebody's asking me to write where they're going to be interviewing me tomorrow night. And one of the things it's about this same thing. What would I say to a woman who wants to enter into the ministry? And I say this to anyone who ever asks me, you better be sure you're called. Make sure that this is a calling, because it is not, as you know, this is not an easy walk. People think, all you do is get up and speak on Sunday. No, this is a life commitment that the soul has made. And there are many days and many occasions where I'm like, you know what? Woo! I'm done, but I know that it's a calling. And so it wasn't something that was on my radar to do, but I'll confess this. I've always been a spiritual person. So I've had a deep and committed spiritual walk since I can remember, as a child. And I just didn't know that I would be, enter into the ministry. And especially since I had not seen any women. Eric Butterworth was my first unity minister. And Eric, was just powerful. He was the right minister for me because I loved his thinking. I loved his mind. I loved the way he expressed the principles in such a wonderful way that everybody could understand it. And but actually, I was listening to him when I got my call, and I found myself, I was watching, it was one Sunday, and I said, I could do that. I don't know why I said that, but I said, I could do that. And literally, I heard an inner voice said, you will do that. And I was like, what? Where did that thought come from? And then I spent 8 years trying to push it off. But during those 8 years, because I kept saying to the divine within me, who, me? Who I used to say, I'm just a girl from Brooklyn. You can't mean me. Not only am I just a girl
Right.
from Brooklyn, I'm an African American girl from Brooklyn. And I had not seen any women ministers, nor had I seen, because this is now, I'm talking 40 years ago, and I had not seen any female ministers or African American ministers, especially in the New Thought movement. And so I remember the call would not leave me. I would apply and then, just look at the application. And I go, oh, no, I'm too young. I can't give up my life for this. No. And then I would do it 2 more years. Oh, no. And I did that 4 times. And on the 4th time, it was like, I must answer this. Let me send the application back this time. But prior to that, I went out to the village because I had not been to the Midwest. I had not been to Unity Village, and I wanted to see what it would feel like. And I came across Sally Taylor. Now, I don't know if you knew Sally Taylor, but again, she was one of the she was after Johnny but a Bible teacher, well known within the Unity movement. And I thought, oh, great, I can ask her what's it like, because again, I stayed to teach. They only would have at one time one African American faculty member, So I remember when I got there and I did my 2 years, they asked me to stay and teach. And Johnny said, oh, you're here. Now I can go. I met Johnny. Reverend Sally Taylor said, oh, thank God you're here. Now I can go. And I remember the same thing when Maurice was coming behind me. And I said, oh, great, you're here. It's time for me, because we were each trying to make sure that there was representation
Sure.
in the leadership at the movement. But it wasn't without, you can bring people on board. But as you know, change, real inner change, does not happen because we say we want it to happen. It has to be.
Right.
So this was in the Midwest, where racism and it was a part of the nature and culture, and it didn't mean that Unity did not have its challenges, because the people that served were the people that were in the same culture as the nation, regardless of how spiritual they were. So it was interesting.
So tell me about studying with Eric Butterworth, who is like the guru of prosperity and so clear. What was that experience like in terms of how did it affect you and your prosperity consciousness, for example?
Well, I wouldn't say he's so much prosperity consciousness. He was all around just he had a brilliant mind and a deep thinker, which is what I liked. So he could pose these questions and yet in a simple way that it interested me, but also he could bring everybody on board. And I loved his teaching style, and he was clear, very clear in his teaching. So every day I also worked in Manhattan, where before they moved to Lincoln Center, where every day I went after work before going home, and I meditated, and I just soaked all this material out. And he had a wonderful program. He had a radio program, and his talks were well known throughout the New York State, with his radio program. And it was just he was the perfect minister for me, because he was able to capture, you couldn't come at me with no yin yang, stuff. It had to be something that I could say, there's something here. There's a depth here that is real and can really heal and transform a person's life. And I was interested. My field is psychology, as you know, and education. I have a degree in both of those areas. And so I was always interested in the nature of the mind and how can we transform our lives by working with our minds. My first exposure to merging spirituality and psychology actually came from Norman Vincent Peale. And he wrote a
Okay.
book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And I
Mm-hmm.
read that book at 18, well, a little bit before 18, about 17 years old, I read that book, and I just loved it. I loved the concept of merging the two. And that's what I saw Eric having the capacity. He could take the functions of the mind and merge it with the spirit of the heart, and in such a way that it was so stimulating, and
Yes.
it just spoke of truth, and so he was the perfect one. And as I said, I got my call listening to him.
Yeah, I guess I think of him in terms of spiritual economics, because
Oh,
that's the
yes.
book that I fell in love with him around, and
Well, I do have a
certainly.
good prosperity consciousness now, but I believe that
I'm
that
sure.
is hooked up to having a solid prayer consciousness, whether it's a prayer consciousness, prosperity consciousness, a health consciousness. It is how we take these principles and ingest them into our consciousness. So,
Yes, that wholeness.
that wholeness, yeah. And I believe in
Yeah.
being prosperous. It took me a minute to get there, though. I was of
Hmm.
the old school that, ministers shouldn't be prosperous, we should be. And I was like, so it took me a while to lay that down. And
Yeah.
once I laid it down, I thought, you know what? Jesus said that the servant is worthy of his hire. And it's
Hmm.
like, I give my very best, I give my all to whoever I am serving.
Yes.
And I deserve the very best because of that as well. And so once I give the best, but I also deserve to receive the best.
Yes.
I'm good with it. I'm going to be blessed because I'm going to bless you as well.
Now, as a counselor, what does that blessing look like? I mean, how are you being present with people in a way that they feel supported?
This is such a powerful time that we're in, Rev.
Yeah.
And what I find myself doing each Sunday is making sure that I feel that I'm creating a safe place for people to be, because most of us have never lived through a pandemic this long. And because of that, I tell them, this is the time that we must really stand on our principles and use them. People are being challenged as never before. There's a high degree of anxiety, the sense of not knowingness. So I'm trying to bring up principles that would move us through that. So for anxiety, for uncertainty, because these are the times that we're living in. What do we need? We need, I'm going to be talking this Sunday on Dr. Martin Luther King said that these times we need some audacious faith. So
Yes.
I'm talking about audacious faith so that we can handle uncertainty. What is it going to take? You got to have audacious faith, meaning you got to be bold. You have to move in with deep trust because it's uncertain. So how do we embrace the uncertainty? So I find myself making sure, this is the other thing. I never put myself on a pedestal. I always let them see my walk as well. So there may be times when, I say, you know what, I'm trying to carry everybody, but sister, I need to rest for a minute. I need to step back because this is a bit much. I got my mother, I have a 93-year-old mother that I live with. I take care of her and she's got her anxiety about what's going on. And I've got the church. I said, so there are moments when I have to remember, let me surrender to that which I know. Or I might have to say, you know what? I step back a little bit. It is what it is. Take it, surrender in the terms of letting the divine guide me, because I
Yes.
can't control half this stuff that's happening out here. Well, truth be told, none of
Yes.
it.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
counseling from a lived experience, number one. And I think people appreciate that. You got to be authentic.
Right.
So, if I'm falling down, I don't say, you know what, I walk on water. My people know, I'm subject to have any experience, and I tell on myself. I
Hmm.
tell on myself because unless they can see how I also get back on that horse using my principles, they will think that it's impossible. It
Yeah.
becomes some kind of mythical bar that they're trying to reach, but they can never reach it. No, we have to practice. We have to have a lived experience with truth. And if you don't practice inner integrity, so when I'm having my moments where I have forgotten my truth, I state that only because I also know how to get back.
Yeah. Those
So
spiritual tools really help. And this whole COVID thing is really keeping us real, and of course, as ministers, we know we have an obligation to let people know that we're not above challenges.
mm-hmm.
And there's so much that is being purified in this whole process.
That's right. And I let them see that this is a spiritual experience. So let's not freak out because we're equipped for it. We've come for this. So we have to just remind each other we can do this, We can
or
do
as the God in me can.
Yes. Right? Definitely.
So let me ask you the question I ask all of my guests on Mystic Magic. Can you think of a mystical moment that changed your life?
Wow. I have had so many mystical. It's so weird that you used to say that. One of my good friends, her name is Sister Jenna, and she's a Brahma Kumaris and a yogi, female yogi. And the Brahma Kumaris is a female-run organization. It's been around for a long time. Matter of fact, she just wrote this book on mystical experiences. It's called Meditation and Intimate Experiences with the Divine Through Contemplative Practices. And she asked everybody to talk about if you ever have had them. And I've had many. I don't really necessarily go around and just talk about them because I said if I really tell people some of my experiences, they would probably want to say I belong in, to be committed or people, the first tendency might be is people deny, oh, that certainly didn't happen or whatever. I've experienced time warps, where time displayed itself, altered itself right in the middle of my midst, and I've had proof of it because this is when I was living in Syracuse, New York, and Syracuse was in a snow belt. And I was doing, while I was a minister at Syracuse, living and working and attending Syracuse, I would also speak at different churches, Rochester, Unity of Rochester, Buffalo, whatever. And I was on my way to speak at a church in Rochester. And it was a snowstorm blizzard was coming along, right? So I couldn't see and I missed my turn. And on the turnpike, it's about 10 miles to the next exit, right? Because it's a turnpike, so it's not around our corner. So I got to the next exit so I could turn around and go back. So I did. I had to turn around and you get a ticket, right? So I got my ticket. I the guy gives me the ticket. I accept it and I go through. And, honest to God, it felt like within like 2 minutes, I was at the next exit, And it legally, I shouldn't have been able to get there that quickly. So this is the funny thing. When I got there, I had to give the ticket to the guy to pay. And he looked at the time. He looked at the time that the ticket was stamped, and he looked at me and he said, "How did you get here this quick?" And I said, "I have no idea." It was so baffling. And these are the things. Spirit sometimes will give me witnesses that people can see some of these mystical things that other people see. So he's like, it's impossible. I said, "Sir, I have no," because I said, I got the ticket. I looked up and I'm at your exit. I honestly don't have. And he just was baffled and looked at me and I was baffled.
Time collapsed.
Something happened, but he was able to look at the ticket and it was, so I've had many things like that. Too many to really remember. But when they happen, I've had several by myself, but I've had several in the company of other people, and they always look like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. It's not me.
Right.
But what it says to me is that this I know, that we live in a dimension, of course, that we always talk about various dimensions, the mental, physical, emotional dimension. But the spiritual dimension is not one that can be qualified simply by time and space and matter. Right. That spirit is above and within that, but certainly above and beyond that. And anytime we want to put confines as to how we think spirit is supposed to show up, it's too limiting. That
Right.
God cannot be limited. And when you really want to, because otherwise, how could, the miracle of healing take place? And there are many, many things that we have seen where this should not happen, but the spirit, the presence of the living energy of life itself presents, oh, it's possible. So where
Yeah.
someone shouldn't be healed, they are healed. Where someone shouldn't live, they live. So we can call it grace, you can call it whatever. But I think we're moving to the place, and we must move to this place, where we're shedding this old paradigm of the limitations of being just simply a physical being in a body. We like to say, and I guess you've heard this one, we all like to quote, we are spiritual beings, in a
Having a
spiritual
human
universe, having a spiritual experience. We say it, but when it really starts to happen, it's like, whoa. So until we start to, what I believe is this next evolution that we are in the midst of right now is a spiritual one, where we are breaking down. Everything is breaking down. But that means also the barriers of this physical world that we're seeing is also breaking down. The veil is being lifted. The curtain has been rent so that we are now seeing, right? Seeing through the curtain in the mirror clearly that there's
Yeah.
another dimension, and we are about to now step into the owning these powers. So when you say you're a spiritual being, it can no longer be lip service. You
Right.
must then be willing to step into this dimension of what does it mean, so that you can be like the Christ who walked on water, who manifested, enough food to feed the multitudes and have plenty of abundance left over, so that we can start doing these miracles, which you and I know are not any special things. They are simply a higher working of higher spiritual laws. So
Yes.
it's an exciting time, and we are the ones that are helping people to come along, showing the way, being a light bearer. So it makes sense that more and more of these things will happen to those of us who say, "Hey, look, here's the way. Walk
Mm-hmm.
ye in it. Here's
I
a
shall
way."
there.
Right?
I shall there be light.
Yeah. No,
So,
I'm sorry. I'm long-winded. I'm a
oh
minister.
no, it's great, it's great, it's great. I love it. And so, yeah, because I think of Barbara. Oh, what was her name?
King or
No, this was a older white woman who she would tell us that she was very prominent in New Thought. And
Barbara.
she would say, we're just going to be light. We don't require a body.
Yeah, yeah. I believe
Right.
that. We are light.
Yeah. Yeah.
The body is
And-
nothing but energy. And so we have to
Right.
learn how to use energy, be masters
that-
of it.
And to say that that's the next phase is
Yes.
to say that,
Yeah.
obviously, because we're knowing that nothing is permanent,
That's right.
and that this world appears to be, but it's not.
Right.
So tell our audience, what do you got coming up? What's a website or a publication or a book or something where people can get more of you, to know more about you and experience more of your brilliance?
Okay. Well, 2 books. I also was this was a contributing author, but I also was a contributing author with a book of some very wonderful people who are called Evolutionary Leaders. It's a group that I belong to, and you have Deepak Chopra's in it, Bruce Lipton, some very, Barbara Marx Hubbard, and maybe you were talking about Barbara Marx Hubbard, but
Yes, that's who I was talking about.
Yeah, she just passed, but she was in the group.
Right.
And we co-authored a book called Our Moment of Choice. It's Our Moment of Choice. So if people are really interested in thinking about where we're to be in the future, which is now, the future is now, the future is here, that's a wonderful book. I also have been doing some work with, I created a foundation called Stand Up for Humanity, because I believe that, we are all in this together, but we have to speak. We have to lift each other up. We can't stand on the sidelines any longer. And, we all know the statement that says the thing that is necessary for evil to prosper is for good men and women to do nothing. We must
Right.
speak. And I also got the message that the meek shall inherit the earth. So there's so many more people who are of good heart and good spirit and good mind, that those who perhaps are still in a learning experience, I'll call it that. But it's time for us to rise up together. So I've done a couple of big events on the mall here using the Capitol, as a wonderful place in front of the Lincoln Memorial. So I tell people, look out for that, for some other things coming up. I haven't published my own. I'm working on some books now, some things, but people have been saying, write a book. And I've said, I'm waiting for the books to write me. Yeah. So we'll see where that goes. But, I have podcasts for the services. It's all digital now. So you can just tune in to unityofwashingtondc.org and look up on YouTube, and you'll be able to catch some podcasts or whatever's coming up in the future.
Wonderful. Well, I know that they will be blessed by it. And I just so appreciate your candor. You bring in all your Brooklyn and bring in all of your heart and bring in all of your soul to the party, whether it's in the church or on the streets or in front of the Capitol. I love it. And I just really appreciate who you are. I'm looking forward to seeing you as a keynote speaker at Celebrating Our Soul, a New Thought conference by people of African descent. And so this is just a wonderful opportunity for us to multiply the consciousness in such a magnificent way and such a unique way, because we all get to shine our colors so magnificently and in service to love.
Yes.
So, and I appreciate that you're looking out for humanity, and that you're looking out for your mom, and you're looking out for yourself. And you're noticing your spiritual, magical moments. This is Mystic Magic. Everything goes here. So thank you for coming to Mystic Magic.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. I'm so glad to have connected with you. And I know that this is just the beginning. We will be on this journey, for a little while longer together. So thank you.
Yes. This is Mystic Magic, exploring our spirit to understand our lives.